So I just got out of seeing Logan, and even though it's 1:30 in the morning and I'm very, very tired, I had to talk about it for two simple reasons. First off, it is as good as the trailers make it look, and second, because it's a movie that proves that the third movie in a comic book trilogy can be the best in the series, and it can be awesome. So let's talk about it. So Logan is set over 10 years in the future at a time that looks very bleak for mutants. Logan and Wolverine are hiding away on the Juarez-El Paso border, essentially just waiting to die. But things get exciting for them when a woman with a small girl show up looking for travel up to Canada, and this sets up the events for our movie. On the surface, it's kind of just a road trip movie, but it's so much more than that, and it's such a great payoff to this series that has been a part of my entire adult life. And what I mean by that is the first X-Men movie came out right after I graduated high school in the year 2000, and so Hugh Jackman playing Wolverine has kind of been a part of my whole adult life, so it's kind of like a real sad moment in my life, as it's no longer going to be the case. But with all that said, let's start talking about the movie. Now, I intentionally kept the plot synopsis pretty short because this movie's much more about the character study and the themes of life, death, remorse, regret, consequences than it is about like this really specific, intricate study. And in that, it's an incredible conclusion to these characters that have been around a really long time. And you couldn't have made this movie if we didn't have all that came before it, the good, the bad, and the ugly. All of it is developed and given a history that makes this film truly unique while not really necessarily needing the previous films, but making those previous films so much more, giving this one so much more weight to what happens in it. With all that said, let's start talking about the good. The first thing you just have to talk about are the incredible performances from Hugh Jackman and Patric Stewart. So I'm a big Star Trek guy. I've seen every episode of Star Trek The Next Generation multiple times. Huge fan of his. I'm pretty sure this is his best performance I've ever seen from him. I mean, just so nuanced and fitting in the universe and very much kind of being out of character, but out of character in a way that fits in the story because of what's going on. Likewise, Hugh Jackman, we're getting to see so much more of the berserker, the rage, and the crazy of Wolverine that we'd never really been able to see before because of that PG-13 rating. And then this movie crafts a story as well as with the rating that you can see just a viciousness and just a brutality that you just simply could not pull off in those other ratings. And with that, the themes of this just give them the opportunities to emote and reflect and actually truly act. Whereas if I rewatched the original trilogy earlier, it's very comic booky. The first three trilogies, X-Men trilogy, they're very comic booky in natures. Even like the Wolverine got kind of comic booky towards the third act. This movie never goes comic booky. It just allows them to give great performances and tell a story in a world where guys have metal skeletons, heal, and can shoot metal swords out of their hands. Like that's the world we're in, but it never gets into the spectacle, never gets into the big imagery that you see in almost all of the other X-Men films. With all that said, likewise with the action, because it's not going for a big spectacle, it's all kind of grounded, it's shooting guns for the most part, and knife hands, ripping people to shreds. It just has such a visceral, brutal nature to it that the whole movie I was going, ooh, doing stuff like that. That's a little bit embarrassing when you do that in a room full of people. But it's just so intense and kind of jarring to see it in this universe. And I say all of that as a compliment. And it fits into the story of brutality and just where these characters at so perfectly. And like I said earlier, this is so much more of a character study. And with that, even in the way they handle mutant abilities and powers is all kind of in a very grounded world in a sense that, without wanting to say too much about it, but you're dealing with people that are aging and getting sick, and they tie that in with mutant abilities and what that would look like and what that would mean in ways that are just interesting to see, because that's not what we normally see in comic book movies because they're scared of alienating people or we have to have people going big in spectacle. This movie intentionally took a big risk to grounded real life type things that people face and brought it into this comic book world in very powerful ways that really pay off. When we live in a world where every comic book movie has to end with the world ending and sky beams and garbage clouds spinning over cities, and then this movie ends, and that's not what the third act is like. There's not all the whiz-bang shebang. It's just a well-told story where you care about the characters, you care about the choices they're making. There's villains that you really hate for what they're doing and the way they're treating people. Therefore, you care because of those stakes, because I care about people and what is happening to them in particular, as opposed to we just have to show a bunch of big stuff. They don't fall into that trap with this movie at all, and it makes for a truly unique experience with a great story, a great character study, and a great send-off to these characters that we love. And also with this movie, you have to give credit to the marketing department. Great. One of the best marketing campaigns I've ever seen for a movie. It got you excited. It established the tone and the vibe of it without giving away the plot at all. And when you see the movie, you realize, I mean, there really is so much of the movie. They don't even cover big twists that you don't see coming because they weren't teased at all in the trailers. Great marketing campaign. With that said, it's not a perfect movie. I have 3 issues with it. They're all pretty minor for the most part. First off, there's some cliche story elements where characters introduced and you kind of can guess where the plot line's going to go, and it does. Second, the movie has some plot props. That's to say, in the first act, they introduce you to certain items. In the second act, they remind you they exist, and then they play into the third act of the movie. And that's not to say, they're all handled very well. They tie into the plot. It's not forced at all. It all makes sense. But at the same time, as you're watching the movie, you might be able to pick on the fact, okay, I know that this is going to matter later in the movie. And a third problem is that the villains are kind of underdeveloped and misused in the film. Like there's one introduced in the first act, kind of disappears in the second act and is inconsequential in the third act. We have a couple introduced in the second act that play out in the third act. In the way it's just kind of all handled, it feels like maybe we only needed 2 of these people and intertwine their stories a little bit more. But it feels very much kind of like the MCU problem of we spend so much time with our heroes that we underdevelop the villains, and it's kind of that case with this movie. But these are minor complaints that I just needed to bring up to have an honest review. But overall, this is a great movie with just a few issues. I'm going to give it a 9 out of 10. Man, it's a great action movie, it's a great character study, and it's a great end to this trilogy, and it's a great send-off to these characters. I highly recommend you go check it out. And if I'm being honest, if you like hard R action movies and comic book movies, go see this movie. With that said, it is hard R, so don't take your kids, don't take your 13-year-old, and if you don't like kind of gory action and violence, this movie is not for you. There's a lot of F-bombs, there's a couple of boobies real quick. It's a hard R movie, so just so you know, that's what the movie is, but it's very good, and I highly recommend it. But that's just my opinion. How about you? What did you think about Logan? Let's talk about it in the comment section. This is a non-spoilers video, so please no spoilers in the comment section. What did you think about the movie? Is this the best of the X-Men movies? I think it might be, but that's just my opinion. With that said, if you're new to my channel, please consider clicking that subscribe button. During the work week, I try and do a daily movie news roundup where I talk about, well, the daily movie news. Also, I do 3 or 4 movie reviews a week, as well as a live show on Sundays where I try and interact back and forth with you guys, have some fun, because I don't want to just talk about movies. I want to talk about movies with you, and thank you for watching.